Welcome to the Pullman City Council meeting for this Tuesday, September 12th. Welcome all of you, including the service dogs. We're going to be doing a proclamation on that. That's why the service dogs are here. Plus, we all like dogs.
Yay!
And I can show you a little puppy, and how the little puppy has been treating me. We've had a lot of good times. So, Dee, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Benjamin.
Present.
Councilmember Dubin.
Here.
Councilmember Guido.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Pat Wright notified us that she could not be here. Do I hear a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now have the mayor's announcements. Our first announcement tonight is the proclamation that we made for the National Service Dog Month. It says, whereas we believe the joyful transformative powers of the human canine bond and inclusivity of all citizens in the United States, 64 million adults and children have a disability, and only 16,000 service dogs from accredited training programs exist nationwide, and the need is growing. Nonprofit organizations enhance the lives of people with disabilities, providing expertly trained service dogs and ongoing support to ensure quality partnerships. Service dogs empower people with disabilities to lead life with greater independence, and we believe it shows appreciation for the extraordinary work service dogs do every day for the people in their care. So whereas National Service Dog Month aims to educate our community about the benefits of service dogs and the laws protecting them, and whereas the City of Pullman continues to work towards becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens and their service dogs are embraced. In recognition of that, I, Glenn Johnson, proclaim the month of September to be National Service Dog Month. And I can hand you the original copy, and if you want to make a comment up here on that microphone, we certainly can do that.
I'm Renee Piper. I'm actually the owner of Tail Wagging Adventures, but I'm also a puppy raiser for Canine Companions out of Santa Rosa, California. This is Tito. He is 8 months old, and he is my 11th puppy.
Wow.
Yeah, please.
Yep, I'm here for him.
Okay. Somebody want to take a picture?
Yeah.
Okay. Susie, get the camera.
Yep.
Hello, my name is Veronica. I actually work at Tail Wagging Adventures with Renee. Little boy here is about 4.5 months. His name's Watson, and he's my first puppy.
Watson looks pretty wise. So we just take a little picture here then? Yeah. So we have application right now being considered for the following groups: the Arts Commission, the Cemetery Committee, Environmental Resilience Commission. So you can please apply if you want to on the city website. A reminder, the City Council Town Hall will be coming up on Tuesday, September 26, 7 o'clock. Regular City Council meetings also have opportunities for public comment. Town Hall offers an opportunity to have meaningful conversations with City Council members, ask questions, give feedback, and help build a stronger Pullman. Got a notice today from Energy Northwest. As mayor, I supported an application that went to WashDOT. Energy Northwest is out of the Tri-Cities. And they said, great news, we were notified at WashDOT this morning that Energy Northwest was selected for great funding for the installing EV chargers in Pullman in the apartment retail complex development going on at 1490 Northeast North Fairway Road. And the application originally is for fast chargers. Chargers can be done in 30 minutes. And instead of using 8 spaces to park, fast chargers can do it in 4. So we're happy to see that message that came through today to say we've got the grant and we appreciate it. Many of our city parks are currently undergoing playground upgrades, something the council has been after for quite some time, and we had some money especially from the COVID funds that we were able to do that. And it's just been wonderful to see the transformation of some of our parks, and it's still going on. This includes Rainey and Krugel Parks, Mary Parks. Pullman's first fully ADA accessible park is getting a brand new parking lot installed. So that's why we've had to put a fence up. During construction, Mary Parks is closed to the public, but it will schedule to reopen near the end of October. There's a lot to dive into at Pullman Aquatic and Fitness Center. 20% off sale all month for the annual memberships, plus fun Friday events, including dive-in movies. And you can follow up on that one all you want to. I don't know if I'm going to dive in for a movie, but you can if you'd like. And I'm sure Kirk probably has pictures of that. The Pullman Moscow Regional Airport will be performing its mass casualty incident drill tomorrow. Again, it is a drill. It involves the Pullman Police Department, Pullman Fire Department, the Airport Fire Group, and that's going to happen at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So if you see a bunch of emergency equipment at the airport, do not start rumors. It's a drill. I repeat, it's a drill. And I just left the National Airport Conference that was going on in Spokane. I was up there Sunday, Monday, a little bit this morning, and attended a couple of the emergency management planning sessions. And the airport crew is just doing an amazing job. And again, they have to drill and make sure everything goes right. And hopefully you never have to use it, but you need to do the drill. Pullman Transit will be providing special park and ride services for WSU home football games. Very successful this past weekend, beginning 3 hours prior to kickoff. You can take Cougar Express 1, 2, or 3. All routes drop off and pick up at Martin Stadium, and it's free. Again, it's free. It's fantastic. Every year, the Washington State Department of Ecology recognizes wastewater plants operated safely and efficiently that demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvements. To be considered for an Outstanding Performance Award, again, this is from Ecology, plants must fully comply with discharge permits, specifically achieving full compliance with water quality permit requirements, monitoring and reporting requirements, spill prevention planning requirements, pretreatment programs requirements. A lot of requirements go into this, and this is the third year in a row that the city wastewater treatment plant has received a prestigious award. Sharing over 84 years of combined experience, 8 full-time employees. Let me read some of the employees we've got. We've got Trevor Cook, who's our superintendent at the wastewater treatment plant. Zareen Dusey, Brawin Corbell, Ryan Morris, Joe Pasak, Carol Stevenson, Kyle Woodard, and Larry Zeller. These are some of the great operators we have. 5 plant operators, a mechanic, a laboratory manager, combined with all their experience. And that is a reason why Ecology gave us an award. So I get to present that to Trevor Cook, who's our superintendent. So Trevor, for the leadership, and I know we've been through a few of the things this week. Fantastic. Outstanding performance for 21 and 2022. And you've just done an outstanding job out there. Just fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Now, the next item on the agenda is an amendment to the agenda, a motion to ratify the mayor's emergency declaration of September 11th related to the wastewater treatment plant biosolids. We put out a declaration of emergency because of certain things that were being held up by the Department of Ecology. With a report on that, here's first of all our city administrator, Mike Urban, and then we have Sean Wells, our public works director.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council. This declaration of emergency was necessitated because the review of our permit to haul and agriculturally spread biosolids as we have for the past 19 years had not been began to be reviewed on the 5th of September when we got the most recent notice. As you are all familiar, the city safely treats our biosolids at our award-winning wastewater treatment plant and accumulates these matters for hauling and agricultural application each year during September. Currently, there's more than 3,000 tons of this material stored in our lagoon, which has a capacity of 3,500 tons. Since the permit has not been reviewed and since there is a 30-day comment period after the review is completed, it has become clear that the 2023 window to perform the same activity as previously will not be able to be accomplished due to the weather conditions and being able to get into these fields. So this state of emergency is timely to avoid any health hazards by overaccumulation of maximum capacity in the storage lagoon. We're not in that condition yet if we execute the contingency plan. What the state of emergency does allow is to not only activate that contingency plan, but to bypass the existing procurement policy and begin hauling biosolids to the alternate sites. So to talk more about that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Wells.
Thank you, Mike, Mayor, Council. So what's changed? Pullman's 5-year general permit coverage with the Department of Ecology for biosolids management was due for renewal the end of 2020, or in the beginning of 2023. The previous farmer we were spreading our material on informed us at the end of 2022 that he no longer wanted to have Pullman's biosolids material for the continuing cycles. So that's something that's happened in the past. It's not out of the ordinary. We went out, we started soliciting farmers to spread the material on, and if you recall, back in March of this year, we approved a contract with a new farmer to haul materials to his site. Public Works staff then worked with JUB engineers and prepared a biosolids application to Ecology, which includes a new farmer, new field locations, got that all into the permit application. So the permit coverage application process and supporting materials were turned into Ecology on June 20th of this year. Ecology informed us at that time that we were first in line to be reviewed after completion of another application ahead of us. Staff maintained periodic correspondence with the Eastern Ecology Region's Biosolids Program Coordinator through phone calls and emails, and each time we did, we were told that we are either next in line or that we're working on a separate application and we haven't looked at yours yet. So on August 4th, we inquired one more time, said, what's the status, what's going on? And 10 days later, we got an email response back from the program coordinator confirming that she was working to finish an application review for another facility ahead of us and would reach out to us when she began reviewing our application packet. And some of the quotes from her email, I'm currently working to finish an application review on another facility. I'll reach out to you when I begin reviewing your application packet. Repeated emails and calls asking for updates are not helpful. They're distracting and continue to pull me from work I'm doing currently on their facility. Another quote, I told you there were no guarantees to your application would be ready for public review and approval by this fall. And the last one, at this point I cannot be as responsive to requests for updates or questions about moving forward with any activity at any proposed new site prior to my approval. From this point forward, please assume there are no changes until you hear from me. Once again, I will reach out as soon as I begin reviewing the permit application. We turned it in June, and last week, she's still confirming she has not yet started our application. So, we continued as directed. We gathered soil samples for the new farmer's field and material samples of our biosolids. We sent them to the lab, we had them tested. We performed our calculations on what our application rate is, how many tons per acre we could spread. And we sent that in to her on September 5th, last week. We received a reply last week stating she still has not yet begun our review and that we do not have approval to spread or haul or do anything with this material at this time. So at that point, we knew we were going to miss our window for spreading on the Druffels property. We had to, even when we get approval from Ecology, they have to go through a 30-day public comment period before we get the authority to go and actually spread on the material. So that's just the playing field. We had to go in and use our contingency plan. Pullman's biosolid lagoon capacity, as Mike mentioned, is 3,500 tons of material. We currently have just over 3,000 tons there now. The plant produces about 9 tons a day. And phase 1 of our contingency plan, we will ship material to a facility in Lewiston, but they can only take 36 tons a week. So we make more than 36 tons a week. We have to find a second facility. So the second facility we identified was a facility in Airway Heights that we are proposing to use in our upcoming permit that has yet to be reviewed. That location can take 25 tons per day, but our trucks can only haul 9 tons per load. Airway Heights trucks can haul 25 yards, or 25 tons, but their trucks aren't available until January. So we've got a little conundrum here of logistics. We're trying to work out those details right now. But we're trying to figure out a way to haul to both locations to make it work so that we can get the pile down to where we can actively manage it properly. But that's going to require the use of a second truck. The wastewater treatment plant has one truck. We would be borrowing from maintenance and operations truck. That truck specifically is designated as a snow and sanding truck that we would have to pull off of biosolids to go do snow and sanding during those days. So it gets logistically challenging. Based on staff equipment, availability, road conditions, other mitigating factors, we will be hauling in the middle of 2024. Dampness, moisture content of the material is all a factor as well. Both facilities have the right to refuse the load if the moisture content is too high. So that puts the immediate need to get the material off of the property now while it is dry and the moisture content, we can regulate it without having snow and rain on it. So going through this contingency process is something that couldn't reasonably be expected, anticipated based on our past practices. We haven't had this situation in the last 19 years that we can go back and actually point to. So Mike?
So to tie on to the operational piece, I want to touch on the financial piece. As Sean mentioned, past experience did not put us in a position to be able to reasonably anticipate this situation. Specifically, the additional financial burden to the utility fund, to the community, and to Washington State University. So instead of just the cost of staff time to haul the biosolids 5 to 10 miles away and spread on the field, and no tipping fees, which we'll be experiencing now, it's 80 miles round trip to Lewiston 4 times a week, and 160 miles round trip to Airway Heights as often as we can get up there, up to 2+ loads a day. So along with staff time, fuel, wear and tear on equipment, other operational considerations, and along with the tipping fees, the total cost to remedy this still unknown, but figured upwards of $500,000. 36.4% of the utility fund is funded by Washington State University based on their flow study from the university into our facility. And reserves can absorb this one-time unanticipated expense, but it will definitely affect future projects. If this contingency plan becomes the new operating model, this will not be sustainable under the current utility rate structure. These circumstances have conspired together to bring us before you today with the solution that is certainly unpalatable, but unfortunately necessary. Mayor, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, that was the reason why I had to declare the state of emergency. I did notify Chancellor Chilton, and I did notify Senator Schessler, talked to him, and he did make a call to the head of ecology. We've been talking to Brooke Beer, who is the superintendent of the eastern side of ecology, this afternoon. They're going to be on site to do an on-site inspection, Trevor says at 1 o'clock on Monday. And we also cited, thanks to Thad, came up with a WAC provision that said that they can do something provisionally that could possibly go on with this, but Brooke didn't have that much knowledge about that particular WAC that we quoted. She was going to look into it. But she responded to us. I also notified the governor's staff, just saying that the governor is trying to push for a green environment in terms of all the trucks that are on the road that we have to go now to 160 miles instead of 5. It makes an impact on the environment as well. So I did notify the Eastern Washington director of the governor. I've had a number of conversations with ecology, but all 3 of us were on the line this afternoon talking to Brooke, and she thinks that we can maybe work through this. I'm not going to go into no promises whatsoever, but they will be on site on Monday, and she's going to review some more things and may get back to me before Friday. But it's been, when you start taking a look at, we filed June 20th, well ahead of time, did everything right, and all it needed was, we're moving from one farmer, a druffle, to another druffle, and we're not that far apart. And why this couldn't be processed in due time where it should have been. Even when I called this particular individual, and it's Terry Costello, who's the superintendent of this particular area. She's the one in charge of the wastewater and the biosolids. And when I left a nice message, because she was on vacation, I just said, here's the situation. We need to get this on the farmer's land before it gets really wet, and we're going to lose a truck, perhaps. It might get stuck in the mud. And then we got an email back that says, having a phone call from the mayor, he didn't leave a phone number, so I didn't have to file the form as to conversations, and basically telling us not all. And that's why we were trying to do this behind the scenes, not make a big thing. Let's see if we can get it done with the existing people. And Brooke was asking today why we didn't call her right away. I said, we were trying to work around the system. And finally, it got to the point where we said, okay, enough is enough. And Senator Schussler is very aware of biosolid applications. He's a farmer. He knows how it all goes. We even had other farmers even call us up. But again, you have to go through the whole process. But that's why we took the action. So you want to add anything more to that?
Sure. To reiterate the point that we waited until the last possible minute that we could, because we did believe that the Department of Ecology would process the permit in a timely manner, because their experience in the past is, less than 2 weeks. And we certainly thought that when we sent in the soil sample, we'd get some good news. But when we got the news that they hadn't started looking at it yet, we ran the timelines, and that's when we realized, yes, we do have an emergency.
So that's the reason for the declaration of emergency. And tonight we're asking the council to confirm that I declared on Monday. So there's a motion before you to ratify the mayor's emergency declaration.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Now we have a couple of confirmation of appointments. And we're grateful to say we now have the Civil Service Commission fully staffed. Yeah, that is if you confirm first of all, we have a motion to confirm the appointment of Milford Hodge to the Civil Service Commission. I want to thank Police Chief Jake Opkenorth for helping Milford's on his advisory committee, and Jake gave just an amazing appeal, and Milford responded. So you see, as we've sent all their applications and their application forms and their bios all to you, so you have that ahead of time. Do I hear a confirmation for Milford?
Move to confirm Milford Hodge to the Civil Service Commission. Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The second nomination is Roberta Kramer to the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. She is the Assistant Superintendent of the Pullman School District. It was one of their requests that she would be on this, and I'm more than happy to do that. Do I hear a motion on this?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now move to presentations. And so tonight we get to join with and celebrate with 100 years of League of Women Voters. And our presentation will be from the League's Sue Hins and former Mayor Karen Kiesling. And Sue Hins, a former council member, and the cotton candy queen. Of the entire Palouse. I don't know if that was in your bio, but I just thought it just came out.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
council members, staff, and those with us tonight. My name is Sue Hintz, and again, on our committee for the League, Karen Kiesling, and not with us tonight is Mary Collins. About 4 years ago, this would be 4 years ago, BC. Not the way we have remembered BC historically, but before COVID, the League of Women Voters had a wonderful idea. We were coming on to our 100th birthday, and how do we celebrate it locally? The national organization felt that local birthday parties were a much better idea than just one major thing and we all meet for a convention. So we got to thinking, and we felt that as much as we've learned about our county and so on, that we thought we would recognize the women who have been elected or appointed to mayor or city council in all of the 16 communities in Whitman County. Now, that is a task, but we thought we had given ourselves a good year to take care of it. I will tell you that it takes people like Dee and the other 15 city clerks to help with such an endeavor, to hope that we found every woman who was appointed or elected to the different councils. Well, Pullman, we feel, was a little bit easier, but we still had the best time looking up these individuals at the county courthouse. So it is a task, but it was an enjoyable task for us to do. So tonight, we would like you all to be our first council to receive a recognition plaque, for lack of a better word, that names these women and in alphabetical order, and the positions. Our 2 mayors are listed separately, and our council. Now, I will say that we do not have 2 of our most recent members, and I am very sorry. But I'm going to hope that our great-grandchildren of the future will have you all on it at our 200th birthday. If not, maybe we'll try to do it more often. But Becky and Megan, thank you for your last 3 years and hopefully many, many more years serving on the council. This is an important time, as any fall is, for the League of Women Voters and the city. You have many contested races, and you have many people interested in voting. Well, League of Women Voters will be readily available for the next 6 weeks to help register anyone. Now, we're not the only place to take care of this. One can go online, can pick up a form, can fill out the form online, can ask for one to be mailed to you. There is not a way that you cannot receive the information for preparing to vote. So please pass that on to the men and women that you run into of 18-year-old and older, so we can get them registered and they can be a big part of the communities that they belong to. But tonight we do want to give, I don't know, our most senior member, and that is likely, I'm going to take a guess, is it Eileen? Have you been on the council?
In the room today, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, is, but she's absent. May we give you the certificate?
Certainly.
It's framed to be hung in the City Hall. We hope you will do that. The names are in alphabetical order only. We could not actually correctly determine election results. It was much more difficult than we thought it would ever be. We were at the auditor's office. We were at the Secretary of State's office. We went to each of the towns. Our records are far from shining. So if we left someone out that you know about, please let us know that and we'll correct it. Thank you. Congratulations.
And of course, I need to say one word about another topic near and dear to me. If you all have any funds hiding somewhere, I want you to give them to Park and Recreation and ask Kurt if he would buy me a new cotton candy machine for the 4th of July. Thank you.
Sorry about that. The league is not lobbying. Just want to make that clear, and thank you. I let her talk because I always talk. Thank you for being
Thank you,
all
Karen.
of your leaders. We appreciate you very much.
I know it was a sacrifice not to talk, Karen, so, yeah. Our next presentation tonight from R.J. Lott, our Community Development Director, on housing legislation for 2023. Another update on that.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. So this is the third legislative update I've given, each of them in the month of September. As you know, housing is important to what we do in community development. Community development staff is committed to providing the best service we can to assist in home builders. So this is a definition, or excuse me, a presentation that our state representatives have, what they've been working on as it relates to housing over in Olympia. Housing, as you know, is a statewide problem. I was at a conference last week and somebody summed it up as it being similar to the game of musical chairs, where we have 10 players and 9 chairs. Housing's not an issue if you have a chair. If you don't have a chair, it's very difficult to participate. So that was a good representation. So as we get started, definitions, those in Olympia have put together a lot of bills, and it's been a point of emphasis this year, as housing, as I said, is a statewide issue. So for those that aren't familiar with some of the acronyms in this presentation, here is a key: House bill, Senate bill, substitute, engrossed, Senate joint resolution, House joint resolution, and lastly, GMA, which is Growth Management Act, which Pullman does not participate in, largest city in the state which is not in a Growth Management Act, which is key. So the bills coming up are denoted with an asterisk if they're required to participate for those cities and counties which are in growth management. Here, the next couple slides are going to be the past bills that have gone through the legislature. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to hit some highlights. There's a lot of them if you've gone through the presentation already. The first one I'd like to highlight is engrossed House Bill 1337, which refers to accessory dwelling units. Now, some of these things in here that are required of GMA cities and counties, staff already does take care of or doesn't require. So there's some things in here that are mentioned, such as impact fees, which the city of Pullman does not have. Some of the other issues that staff feels that the council may want to take a look at moving forward to help the housing issue, lot coverage as it relates to accessory dwelling units, setback requirements, and perhaps things such as off-street parking, which would make the conversion of already existing structures into accessory dwelling units and the construction of new accessory dwelling units a little bit easier. And that, in theory, would help open up some housing options for folks. The next slide, there's 4 bills on this slide. The one I'd like to draw attention to is House Bill 1293, which refers to concerns over design standards of residential units. We don't have these type of design standards. Other cities throughout the state do have them. So this is a bill that eliminates the requirement for certain designs so that it would help expedite review processes of building applications. Our building permit review and building permit applications are already very expeditious and timely, and we've heard that from the community, and they certainly appreciate our ability to act quickly with the call in for inspections. Most people don't know that if somebody calls in before 9 a.m., they can get a same-day inspection, which is quite phenomenal. That type of service is not available throughout the state. I'll just say that. The next slide, House Bill. Oh, let me go through this one quickly. House Bill or Senate Bill 5258 concerns the supply and affordability of condominiums. We don't have too many condos in the city, but I would expect those to increase as time goes on. House Bill 1101 concerns unit owner associations requiring owners intended to lease a tenant screening service. So this is something that would be between a tenant and a landlord. The next slide, House Bill 1622, which is the third one from the top, expands provisions of the grant program for homeless students. I wanted to highlight this because Councilmember Dubin at the last meeting expressed her concerns for WSU students related to housing. This specific bill doesn't relate directly to students at our university level, but it does relate to students as minors. And of course, we all know that there's a direct correlation between clean, affordable, sustainable housing and performance in the classroom. So there are funds available through a program called the Homeless Student Stability Education Program, which is administered through the Department of Commerce in coordination with the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. So there are a number of bills that have, yes, Eileen?
Just to clarify, this comes up from time to time. Student is not a protected class in the state of Washington. Is that remains the fact? That remains true?
I don't know if that's accurate.
Okay. It's something that's been talked about and kicked around. I'd wondered if you just heard anything about that, because it is not a protected class, and maybe that should be looked at by our legislator.
So this is the last slide for past bills. As you can see, there's quite a few. Normally we have maybe a third or a quarter of these throughout the past 2 years that I've reviewed. Even more in committee which have not been passed, but some of them are related to long-term housing concerns, dwelling units, the definition of a attached accessory dwelling unit. House Bill 1167 would concern various planning provisions under GMA for accessory dwelling units. Once again, we're not in a GMA county, so they wouldn't be required of us, but some of these are quite optional that we could participate in. House Bill 1343 would concern the legal establishment of affordable housing incentive programs, such as owner property tax exemptions. Additional bills in the committee are listed here. Like I said, I don't want to go over all of them. There's many this year. House Bill 1111 would establish housing benefit districts for affordable housing. That will certainly help throughout the state. House Bill 1506 would concern requirements for leasing lands managed by the Department of Safety and Health Services for up to 99 years for affordable housing. Additional ones in committee, House Bill 1596 would add a new chapter allowing property tax exemptions. 1052 would concern a property tax exemption for a nonprofit entity providing affordable housing. There's still more in the committee, so you can see that this is a continuing trend out of Olympia. House Bill 1133 would allow for detached accessory dwelling units outside of urban growth areas. Not really something that we would look at, but as you can tell, cities throughout the state really would be interested in these. Senate Bill 5615 would repeal prohibitions on rent control and stabilization. That'll be something to keep an eye on. Senate Bill 5060 would concern the registration of rental and vacant housing units with the Department of Commerce. Senate Bill 5466 would promote transit-oriented development in station areas. That's having higher density around high traffic transit-oriented development such as light rail or high frequency of bus service. Now, some of these which have died in session, meaning that they were not passed and will not go further, House Bill 1402 would adjust urban growth boundaries to account for situations where property owners have not developed property as expected in comparison to comprehensive plans and current development regulations. House Bill 1388 would establish annual rent increase maximums, something that's been an issue throughout the state. And our last slide, House Bill 1670 would allow cities and counties and other taxing districts to triple their annual increases in property taxes, which would be a detriment to affordable housing. So a lot to cover. Staff has tried our very best to analyze these. It's a lot to go through. Really could spend hours and hours on these. But as of now, if there are any that the council would like staff to dive into a little deeper, we'd be more than happy to. Or simply, if there's any questions or comments, I can take those.
One, I really appreciate, RJ, when we get calls from our senators or from our representatives asking the impact on Pullman. You're real quick in responding, so I can text back and let them know. So I really appreciate your quick response to that. Megan?
Thank you, RJ. And I too appreciate these kind of regular updates that you give, particularly on this subject, as I'm working hand in hand with you on the Housing Exploratory Committee. Wanted the council to be aware of the work that's coming out of that exploratory committee right now, particularly looking at accessory dwelling units as helping to increase the supply of affordable housing, because I do believe, after research and working with folks about housing, that it is a supply issue. So we are looking at even though, as you said, we're not a Growth Management Act county, but see the value in existing accessory dwelling units, making those available to non-family members. And then also looking at the idea, as you mentioned, that the parking requirements, we would not require off-street parking for an accessory dwelling unit going forward. And the committee will be meeting again next week, and we will be voting to say whether we want to move those recommendations along to the Planning Commission, which would ultimately, if it moves out of the Planning Commission, to the council. So that would be a step in the direction of, we don't have a lot of accessory dwelling units, but I think there's also interest in creating accessory dwelling units on properties, and we would have to look at things like setback and that kind of stuff. But it's a step in the right direction.
Francis?
Thank you. I do appreciate these updates you bring. There's a lot of moving pieces happening around housing right now, and we know we're in a situation where we need to improve our housing, and so this helps to give us the lay of the land in that way. I am interested, Council Megan, as you look at your committee that you're on as it relates to the accessory dwelling units. I'm interested in what comes out of that. I'm also interested around land trusts. What happens in that area. I didn't see any of these bills that were talked about. Have you seen any bills in the area of the short-term rentals? Because I'm seeing rumblings happening in other states right now where they're restricting short-term rentals. They're concerns that that's part of what's removing our middle housing stock. And whether, I don't see anything here with Olympia. Do you see them having discussions related to the impact or putting some restrictions around short-term rentals?
Yeah, great question. I didn't recall seeing any, but let me go back and take another look. Like I said, there was a lot to go through, a lot of action this year. So let me take a second look, and I can certainly get back in touch with you.
I think there's some cities that have taken action on that, especially when they have housing that goes now to Airbnbs and to that nature, that cities have taken a look at. I think Wenatchee is one of them.
Wenatchee, Chelan has, so there's individual cities have, but I haven't seen anything at the state.
Especially the cities that are close to resorts where they see these houses go up, and then all of a sudden, all the rental fees, everything goes up, the price of housing and everything else hits. And sometimes, I think we have said this in the Government Affairs Committee, when we talk to our legislators, they get it. But sometimes when West Side legislators come up with some new rules, they definitely impact affordable housing. When you start putting a bunch of restrictions on that, we hear from the contractors all the time, that just drives the price up. And that takes it out of that affordable housing. The natural gas one is a perfect example of that.
The state energy code as well
Yeah,
also drives up
that's right.
the cost of housing.
Any comments? Seeing none, thank you, RJ.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. At this point, we're at E in the agenda. This is for persons who would comment on any agenda item that the City Council will take as final action, including the consent agenda, but excluding items where public comment was previously accepted. This includes prior public hearings. Is there anyone who wants to make any public comment on final action we're taking tonight? Seeing none, we'll now move to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Do I hear a motion to read by title only?
So move.
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? O'Sullivan, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item is a motion to dispense with the reading of the August 22, 2023 meeting minutes and approve them as submitted. Item 2 is a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 111349 through 111437, totaling $856,299.79. Item 3 is a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 111438 through 111530, totaling $2,847,025.61. Item 4, a motion to approve disbursements for utility billing refund number 111531, totaling $72.11. Item 5, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 111532 through 111543, electronic transfers 123, 124, and 1048 through 1052, payroll direct deposits numbered 87375 through 87710, totaling $1,035,063.40. Item 6 is a motion to approve disbursements for payroll check numbered 74928, totaling $639.44. Item 7, a motion to set October 10, 2023 as the public hearing date to consider the 6-year transit development plan for 2023 through 2028 and 2022 transit annual report for the city of Pullman. And finally, item 8 is a resolution number R-44-23, a resolution accepting a public access easement granted by Palouse Care Network, Inc., authorizing the execution of said easement and providing for matters properly related thereto.
Is there any matter the council would like up for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda list of items 1 through 8. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now move to the regular agenda. Kirk Damon is our park superintendent. We have a resolution authorizing submission of a local parks maintenance program grant application. So Kirk, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As the mayor just stated, before you this evening is a resolution authorizing submission of a local parks maintenance grant to the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office for path maintenance. The local park maintenance grant program was created earlier this year by the Washington State legislation, where they approved one-time funding of $5 million, $2.5 million for 2024 and $2.5 million in 2025. The purpose of the grant is to help communities address maintenance backlogs and really looking at deferred maintenance in their parks and in recreation facilities or in their assets. So what we've looked at is our past, we're seeing a lot of deferred maintenance. Earlier this year was kind of our first attempt at addressing sections of our path where we did about a half-mile section of path along North Grand Avenue on the west side from Northeast Turner Drive up to Northeast Terraview Drive or Station 2. That project, we filled about 1,600 linear feet of cracks ranging from 1 inch up to 6 inches, and then did a resurfacing seal coat over the top of that. We will probably do about another half-mile section yet this fall before the winter turns on us. But as you can see, we did about 1 mile of path this year, and the Parks Department maintains about 15 miles of path. So it's going to take us some time to address what we need to. So staff thought this would be a good project to put forth with this grant application. With that, I would take any questions.
Any questions or comments? If not, do I hear a motion on this?
Move to adopt resolution number R-445-23.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thad, do you want to read the resolution, please?
Thank you. Resolution number R-45-23, a resolution authorizing submission of a local parks maintenance program grant application to the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office for path maintenance.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item number 2 in the regular agenda tonight is a motion to approve the opioid abatement strategies. With that, our City Administrator, Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Council. As part of settlement agreements with the various opioid manufacturers, local governments are required to participate in an opioid abatement council. As a member of the Greater Columbia Region Municipalities Opioid Abatement Council, we've come together and tried to come up with a standardized form as far as what an opioid abatement strategies plan would look like. So attached to your agenda item is the form that has been reviewed by all the legal folks in all the different municipalities that are included, and we've come together and said this is a good form. So I brought this back to staff and we started talking about some of the opportunities that we could suggest to spend the monies and which items we should be checking off on the form. We're going to recommend selecting all the options just simply because that gives us the maximum flexibility for expenditures in future years as the needs of the organization and the community evolve with the changing landscape responding to this crisis. So just providing for flexibility to turn in this form. This is separate from the actual expenditures that will go in on this, but our expenditures do have to match the categories that they're in. So we're to the point of asking you to go for the form. But if you do perform as presented, staff would schedule quarterly meetings to discuss the deployment of the settlement funds based on the activity of the current needs and the funding that we've received. A budget amendment would be required for 2023 and 2024 for the funds that we'll be receiving, and we'll be back in front of council to present those as part of the budget amendment, and then going forward, it'd just be part of our biennial budget process, and we would call that out during the budget process as we would normally. And as a follow-up to that, staff provide a detailed yearly recap report to the City Council as to the outcome of these expenses associated with the activity. So with that, staff is recommending that you adopt the Exhibit A opioid abatement strategies as presented, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments?
Question, just if we didn't check everything, then that we'd narrow it down. But is there any reason that by checking everything, that if we come in the first few years and say this is what we want to work on, then we come back and want to work on the same things, that we'd be discouraged from doing areas we've already checked, but instead going to areas that we haven't checked yet? I'm assuming that's not the case. That as long as it's with what we've checked, regardless of how we prioritize it, that's not a problem, correct?
That's correct. And with an 18-year payout on one of the other one's closer to 15 years, but we haven't started to receive payments, so they'll pay out fairly close to the same times. Just anticipating those needs 2 years, 5 years down the road. It just we discussed this an awful lot. The maximum flexibility and the way that this form was designed, it was based around the settlement agreement. So those pieces were picked off and put in very carefully.
Okay. I do like the maximum flexibility, especially when you're trying to imagine in 5 years, what are our needs in this area?
And even an 18-year payout, what needs that too? Any other comments or questions? I hear a motion on this one.
Move to approve the opioid abatement strategies for the city of Pullman and to file with the Greater Columbia Region Municipalities Opioid Abatement Council.
Second.
Very detailed, so with that, do I hear a motion to approve? I mean, a vote for approving, okay?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, council.
I looked at Thad, I'm going like, you don't need to read this because Ann just did that, so that's good. Thank you, Ann. It was a motion, so that's good. We got it done. Now comes the legislative priorities. We've been here before, and we came up with some of the comments from the last time we had our meeting about this. We had a lot of suggestions, and we had a couple of people who were missing, so we said, let's hold off until they come back. So with that, Mike Urban.
Sure, thank you. And Mayor, you hit it kind of right on the head, took most of my piece here. So yeah, it's a continuation from the previous meeting. I did highlight in your packet some of the discussion topics and they related, and staff is just before you again requesting council provide some specific edits or language and talking points to incorporate into what we can turn into a first draft and bring back to you for some additional editing of our meeting on the 28th with the delegation.
Are you satisfied or comments? Okay, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, you know, things with the mental health, the mayor had made some really good comments last time. I don't know that they were captured here in this.
There was discussion last time. There weren't specific edits.
Okay.
And those comments, I think, were captured in Dee's minutes as
Okay.
well as my agenda item. So if there are specific edits based on that, and I did want to allow the other council members to participate.
Oh, okay.
So I'd be happy to take those real specific edits if you wanted to put
We
those
talked
in.
about the reciprocity agreement for certification for mental health professionals that could be accepted for states because of the shortage that we have in so many respects.
Right, because right now it says accepting certification from other states and adding telehealth options would greatly increase the accessibility of much-needed mental health resources.
Yeah, I think there was some, I wish I had gone back and done it. There was some good conversation on that, and if it's in the notes, I would like to see.
Sure. Dee, can you pull them off of the minutes that were included in the council packet right now? I can tell you what I wrote in your agenda item, I think was a little more vague than maybe some of the accuracy that she had.
I think adding the mayor just explained the reciprocity.
I thought it was in there.
So
I thought it was in there.
recognize the need.
Just accepting certification.
I see accepting, yeah, certification.
Sure. In my notes on mental health, I just put the emphasizing the importance of the overall goal, as well as the critical need of accepting reciprocity of certifications from other states. In addition, language identifying the need of access to community-based behavioral and mental health on the east side of the state.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I'm hearing from our Legislative Priorities Committee from AWC that there's interest on the west side as well. I mean, they're having some problems, and they would really like to get the Department of Health to get moving on this. And I know in the past I've had meetings with the Secretary of Health on other matters for our hospital, but boy, trying to get something through that area is tough.
Yeah.
Even though I have a former student who's like communications director there, so yeah.
Yeah, so I think those, the edits that were discussed previously would be good. I think another thing is, and I had talked to Joe Schmick at the fair, and he had discussed extending suicide training for pastors and clergy, and that should be, I would like to at least have a discussion because with him about that when we're there, even if it's not in our legislative priorities, that was something he had said he would be bringing to as a part of the mental health piece.
And I'm sure he has that going on around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I really, really want to remove, on the railroad tracks, rail banking, that term has become very hot button.
Caustic in some ways.
Yeah. And I think we can get the idea across of activating those spaces by removing and keeping the rest of the language. I think rail banking will create just continual confusion and hostility.
So just so I'm clear, I think what I heard is if we remove rail banking where appropriate and replace it with activating spaces.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, and being able to discuss. This is about having freedom within our own city to activate that space. You know, I think that's appropriate, but removing the rail banking, I think, is very important.
Just the reference to it there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes.
sure. Yeah, Francis?
The rail banking is the legal process that goes on with this. There is not a process other than rail banking if we want to do this. So, I mean, rail banking is actually buried in here on our, third sentence in. So just in that context, the rail banking is the legal process that this goes through.
I understand that. And I think the term, us bringing it up in the discussions, is going to muddy the water for the rest of the discussion. So
we
while
just
it
take out
may-
that parenthesis.
We can take it out the parentheses, but just.
And we can mention that later in terms of.
Yeah. Then the comment that I would have is that I appreciated all the comment. I wasn't at the last meeting. I appreciate all the comments that the other council members make. I very much support those. When I look at this document,
Be the bullet points.
This is one page.
No, what I'm
Yeah.
saying, so this would be the verbiage, the full verbiage, but on the back of this could be just the topics? Is that what you're thinking? Something like that?
something like that. Because there's some that, because sometimes we'll have 5 minutes, sometimes we'll have 15 minutes, sometimes we'll have 30 minutes. And if we're trying to cover this whole thing, it'd be nice to have that shorter bullet point piece also.
We'd also present it to them ahead of time, so they'd have it.
Yeah. I was just,
Any other comments?
One
So-
second, just
yeah.
a clarification. So with Francis, and I know you've done a lot of this, and same with the mayor. So do you think the explanations, that it doesn't help as much as just kind of a snapshot of this? How it's explaining downtown revitalization. I feel like those are the bullet points, and then there's an explanation, or?
Be
I can
honest with
take
you,
a run
I was
at
very
it.
impressed the fact we had it on one page.
Yeah,
It gives
yeah.
every one of the council members.
I kind of, that's what I was.
Yeah, a little background on every one of these items, which also would help them as well. I don't think we need to take any more out.
Yeah.
Do we have a word count?
I think
From-
it's pretty
from
good
our-
at it, so.
And it gives a little explanation why we're saying these things.
Yeah.
It might be if we created white space between the points. We have white space at the bottom of the page. If I'm looking at the current page, we have white space, but if we added the white space between, that might help.
So for instance, so I'm clear, at the end of each bullet before the next bullet starts, maybe a small space in between each.
Yeah.
But keep it onto one page and don't reduce the font size.
Right.
But I also wanted to ask the question, there is, on the notes from the previous, there is an ad that was requested for tuition. So don't forget, I got to find some room for that in there. But my question is looking at the tuition piece, if that's something I should continue to try to make a rough draft first run at, where, I don't want to offend anybody and get it wrong, does it belong in one of these three? If so, which?
I'd
And
go livability.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that bottom part, you can put the tuition concerns right there to go with ASWSU and campaign. So I think you can handle it. And again, congratulations on getting it one page.
Wish me luck to keep it that way.
Okay. So basically, you've got basic approval with the assumption of just added that tuition thing. So that was part of our discussions. We now move on to the City Council Goals Code of Conduct. Mike?
Okay, thank you again. So as part of the 2022-2023 City Council goals and priorities, review and update the code of conduct for staff and elected and appointed officials was identified. So the state of Washington has language in RCW 42 addressing ethics. In addition, the city of Pullman does not have a code of conduct to update, but does have a code of ethics in Municipal Code 1.05. So as part of council consideration on this topic, we researched and identified several communities that have adopted codes of conduct, 2 from the state of Washington and several from across the U.S. What we've learned is that many of municipalities like ours have a code of ethics but don't have a code of conduct. These were really kind of hard to find more than just a Google search. We provided those cities as part of your packet, and as well, you can click through to those. So I'm back before you, trying just a little more direction. So before proceeding, staff and I are just hoping to obtain some additional clarification and direction to the intent and the expectation of this goal, because we found the conduct and ethics were kind of two different pieces, as well as any language that the City Council would like us to have, bring back for discussion before we bring you a document for adoption.
Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, I believe when we were discussing this, I can't quite remember when, but a lot of the code of ethics that I'm looking at here revolves around employment, gifts, so on and so forth. However, code of conduct, I would say, is more along the lines, when I think about it, whether it's different groups, organizations, it deals with interactions between, it's the interpersonal relationships. And how do you treat those that you serve with, or those that you are managing? And so that was, from what I understand, the nature or the spirit of what we were looking at. I think there were some challenges at one point in the past that kind of had to start to think about how do we treat others better, or how do we approach whether it's staff or other council members or other leaders, how do we do that in a better way? And so I think that's kind of the nature that I understand, that I remember. So I think I've spoken enough. I don't know exactly how to put that into a legal document.
Nor do I. That's why I'm here to ask, because I don't want to overreach on this, and I don't want to underrepresent what the true intent of the council goals.
Other comments? Francis?
This one is a difficult one because the ethics piece is pretty clear. The conduct is the one, as you notice, it's something that's being talked about, but there's not a lot that's been formalized yet around it.
Yes.
And where the formalization tends to fall is going to be in the area of council-to-council relationships, council-to-staff relationships, and council-to-public relationships. And it goes both directions. So it's not just council to public, but public also to council. And where I see the value of the code of ethics is that it helps set a kind of an even ground rule of what is expected of how you will treat others and how others will treat you. And so it's something that I feel is valuable, whether it's someone that is a community member talking from the podium to us, or whether it's us communicating to a community member, that there's expectation. And without having a code that's set up, then if somebody does something that offends or is something that is offensive, without having the process in place, it's difficult to then act without someone's thinking or feeling that you're calling them out unfairly compared to someone else. And so I see this as it's a fairness piece for people for them to understand that we want everybody to be treated fairly, and what does that look like?
I agree.
Ann?
I've looked at these, and Megan too. We were just reviewing more, but the code of conduct is about our behavior, essentially. And so and also for new council members, I think it's important to set the expectation of how we operate as a council. So for example, Corvallis has the bullet points, and they have titles, and so they're talking about be respectful, prepare, how to speak, when to listen, how to ask. Because it's also really important about our behavior, not with each other, not even in this room, but also with, especially with our staff and how we treat them and how we respect them and how we should give them time and not expect things immediately. So that's where I think a code of conduct is helpful because it can loosely define the parameters of our behavior, our being all in these certain specific areas, if that is that helpful at all. So, I mean, just for, I like all of them, but the Corvallis one seems quite succinct and to the point, and we can customize it to us, but at least it would be kind of a starting point.
Just seems right to be with Corvallis right now, with Pac-2
We
in
got
Oregon
60,
State.
you know,
I just saw the tendency to just go with it.
why not?
That was actually fortuitous now that you mention it. So with the council's blessing and hearing the discussion, if it's all right, knowing that I get a little degree of difficulty on this, that I don't mean to underdo it or overdo it, if I start with Corvallis as a base, work through my weird little filter of the current position I'm in and the fact that I've also served on city council for 2 terms, and come up with a draft that I know is a very, very rough first draft, and give everybody a chance to look at some more of these as we go on. I can come back with something that I won't be offended if you guys pick apart.
Yeah, I think it's
Outstanding.
always easy to start with something or customize it than to look at a blank sheet.
And I, as the mayor says, I love the idea of, I will root for the Beavers except for once when they play us. So.
The game has already been picked up by Fox, 4 o'clock. And we had 2.28 million watch the Wisconsin game, and they're hoping for this, a big one too. So,
Thank you, council. Thank you, Mayor.
with that, is there any new business to come before the council tonight? Seeing none, it's coming up on 8:15. I'm going to call an executive session, so we will adjourn from this meeting, go into executive session to consider the selection of a site or acquisition of real estate, lease, or purchase when public knowledge regarding such consideration would cause the likelihood of an increased price. To discuss with legal counsel representing the city matters relating to agency enforcement actions, or to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency potential litigation. And because we want 3 things to be talking about tonight, while the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act do not apply to discussions relating to the interpretation or application of a labor agreement or that portion of the meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopts strategy or position to be taken during the course of any collective bargaining, professional negotiations, or grievance or mediation proceedings, or reviewing the proposals made during the course of negotiations or proceedings, City Council is announcing its intention to discuss such matters in executive session. Executive session will last 15 minutes. It's 8:15 right now, coming up on 8:16. We will start the executive session at 8:20. That gives you a 4-minute break.
Non più tra i farfalloni amoroso.
The executive session for the city of Pullman will be extended for an additional 3 minutes. 3 minutes. looking for a motion and a vote.
Okay, can I get 2 council members? Okay. Who's Mike?
Right here.
There's a mic over there. So Ann, would you make the motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
All those in favor.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Thank you.